Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Today's Show. I'm Rebecca Weintraub, your host, and I'm a release resentments coach. I help people release their resentments so they become the best versions of themselves. And today I have Elizabeth Resnick, executive business coach. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hey, how are you, Rebecca? Hi, everybody.
Wonderful. Elizabeth, tell our viewers how you help your clients.
Sure. I guess what I would start with is really a question. Do you know anyone who's ever felt that they're at a point in their career where they're asking themselves, is that all there is? And they potentially have a mortgage and 3 children and feel a little overwhelmed with their life?
Wow. I asked you a question. You asked me a question. Are we 2 coaches? I think so.
We're all about open questions.
Does that cancel each other out? Now what do we do?
There you go.
So you,
trouble.
from what I know, you help executives with their career and with their life as well. Yes?
I do. So yeah, and here's the story. First of all, I'm not a remedial coach. I should really clarify a little bit about what I do and how I do it. I'm actually, I work with, my sweet spot is with pretty successful, seasoned, smart, competent people. My key group has always been 40s to 60s corporate leaders. However, in the past couple of years, a lot of them had adult children who were flailing or not sure about their direction. So I actually now have a pretty significant millennial stream of clients as well. And I realize how interesting it is to take someone who's just really beginning on their career journey, and you can actually help them become so much more intentional and purposeful about their career life. And it's really quite fascinating having both of those realms that I work with, because lots of times people will come to me in their 40s to 60s and say, I kind of got into my field by whatever, almost by accident. And then I was really stuck in it because I made good money, or really that was the technical field that I became so connected to. And gee, if I had to do it all over again, ... So first of all, with those people who are saying that, I have a very positive philosophy about life in general, but clearly about people's careers. And that is, the world is our oyster. The only thing holding us back is usually ourselves. So I feel very comfortable working with people, sharing with them about just being open to dreaming and putting a stake in the ground. And then I help them close the gap between where they are and where they'd ideally love to be. And with the millennial group, it's a little bit of a different situation, because you have people who are either their, typical millennial or young professional has either 3 concurrent jobs, or, is doing something they really don't like, but they're doing it just for the money. And I really, really encourage them to take a pretty significant step back, as we say, and to really go deep about themselves and to think about, what do they love? What are they good about? And what are they good at? And to really think about how they can dovetail those 2 areas, so that what really happens is that they start to realize that they can have clarity and confidence, even at that earlier point in their career, about where they should be really heading and who they should be. So that's a little summary of my groups. I also deal with pre-retirees, because what I've also experienced is people who just think it's going to be about golfing and no pressure. And all of a sudden, when they don't do some serious thinking beforehand, they end up realizing that they're giving up a lot of social, emotional, sometimes spiritual, intellectual fulfillment that they really actually did not recognize explicitly when they were in their day-to-day work world. So it's really important for almost every stage to really think about what is going to make them most fulfilled in their life at whatever life juncture they're at.
Okay. I absolutely okay. You and I are so connected, normally anyway. I was literally on a call this morning, and the partners on the call were talking about how if 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 we have an opportunity and you come to those leaders at the end of the life cycle of the opportunity, how there's like hardly any wiggle room to shape or kind of steer that opportunity so that everybody wins. But if they were to come like earlier on, like the world is completely open and you can use alternative ways of thinking, or and it more space, more breath, like all of that. And I just, when you were talking about that, I just thought that was so fascinating. And I think it's fascinating that you're doing both at the same time, because you could literally like even pick one or the other as like your niche. But it's, did your career evolve in a certain way where you just fell into the really the latter that you described?
Yeah, that's such a great observation and question, Rebecca. I have to say, I really am living now what I practice, what I recommend, what I guide people to do. And I can't say I was so purposeful really early in my career. I actually started as a credit trained professional. It was the days where women were not necessarily the banking professionals. And so they were actually looking for women who, and by the way, I was an English major in college. So I did not have any background in the finance world, although I'm the daughter of a CPA. And so I got into that world a little bit by accident, and very quickly became a leader and loved it, and realized that I really belong in a helping industry, because I looked at almost anything I was doing, even in banking, as having a customer service component and really helping other people and being very authentic to understanding first people's needs. So I was always a questioner and always curious about people's lives. So I developed a lot of just really wonderful relationships with people from very early stages of my career. What transpired was I ended up winning all these sales awards, because it was the days when all of a sudden credit, actually corporate banking was transitioning into having more of a sales culture and mode. And so they asked me to start up a sales training unit. And I said, I know nothing about sales or training. And they said, don't worry, you'll learn. And so I went to this group related to corporate training, had no idea what it was, and just realized in about 20 nanoseconds that I absolutely loved it and flourished and wanted to learn so much about how people develop and how people grow and how you can really make the most of people's career lives and skills and values and all that stuff. So I ended up going back to graduate school. Columbia had a really good program in organizational development and psychology. And I had these amazing professors who were gurus. I mean, people that I studied, and it really was very life-changing. So I went from going to Kenyon College, where I learned how to learn, and went to a very literary college and had one experience, to going to a very, very focused master's program, where I really learned about the field of organizational development much more conceptually and pragmatically. So I ended up becoming a corporate executive myself for many, many years. I worked at JP Morgan Chase and General Electric and Citigroup. And what was really cool was I was in the finance field a long time, but then I actually segued into manufacturing, and then I segued into the utility industry, and then I segued into the healthcare industry. So what's really, really cool about this profession, as you know, is you can be in almost any industry. And if you love business, as I do, and you love to learn, the thing that's probably the most fulfilling about my career right now, besides seeing people lean, sometimes feeling transformed, is that I'm always learning and growing. And I'm learning from my clients. I see them very much as my partners. I don't see them as, anything other than that, actually. If I look at our areas of expertise, I see them very respective. I'm the quote unquote expert in the methodology and the structure and You know, I use a lot of tools and mechanisms to help people gain certain insights about their future and where they belong, but they're the experts in themselves.
Mm.
And so what happens is it's that dovetailing, it's that congruence, it's that combination that really often catapults someone to the next level of their own level of insight. And that's what's most rewarding of where I am. So I was a corporate executive for many years. I ended up in last part of my career, I managed 4 teams around organization capability and strategic capability and technical skills. And I had executive coaching and leadership development. And when I started thinking about my future and what I loved and what I didn't love as much, I realized how much I loved coaching and I loved executive coaching and I loved working with leaders who oftentimes said to me, "You're the only one I tell this to." And realizing that they're full human beings, although my focus has always been on the business life of people. So I had a lucky accident where I met a president of a company, and I'd commuted, by the way, for years to Wall Street and lived in northern New Jersey. So I met a local president. He had an executive team. He heard what I do, and he made me an offer to come in and work with the executive team. And I just took a big swallow, held my nose, closed my eyes, and jumped right in from the high diving board. And I never looked back. And I have to say, I've probably never been so happy and fulfilled in my life as I am today professionally.
Oh, I love it. I could listen to you all day. Like,
Oh,
first of all, I'm so inspired by you, Elizabeth. I think you know that already, but I have to just say it. Two things popped out for me. We'll start with the first one. So you said the phrase, learned how to learn. I learned how to learn. Like, just talk about that. What does that mean and how did you do it?
yeah, really good question to pick up on, because I do think that dovetails really strongly with my work with my clients and their ability to be open, no matter what stage they're at in their career and their life, to thinking about how powerful it is to still be open to learning and growing. And sometimes, by the way, it's the really small things that make a big difference in people's lives. With that said, to answer your question more directly, you know, I guess when I was younger and in high school and middle school, I was always pretty academically oriented, but I cared about tests and grades and all of those things. And somehow something clicked. I'm actually a very strong proponent of a liberal arts education because I went to a liberal arts school where nothing was forced on you. You could take anything you wanted. So I took world religions and I took anthropology and I, you know, took microeconomics. And I mean, even though I was an English major, you know, I had such a range of learning and I had tremendous people impact, honestly, my whole future and my life. And I just started realizing the power of getting immersed in different subjects and reading and being a voracious reader in a whole bunch of different subjects, the opposite of being kind of myopically driven. And, you know, again, I look at my life, it wasn't necessarily purposeful at that stage, but I really look at these different junctures of my life and recognize they were all building blocks. And that, you know, if I can impart one thing to someone who's in their 20s or 30s or even 40s or 50s, you know. And by the way, I'll tell you, my 92-year-old grandmother, when I interviewed her and I said, what was the best thing? What was your favorite stage of life? And she said to me, every stage. And I said, why? And she said, because I was always learning. That was a power moment for me. So I have to say that's pretty much what happened in my undergraduate career life. And then, you know, I went immediately into the work world. And it was really getting that epiphany of when I switched internally in a financial institution onto the more people-oriented side that I said, you know what, now it's time to go back and get a degree that's actually complementary to my undergrad experience. So it was really the complementarity of those two different academic settings and experiences that I think have greatly contributed to me to be the person I am today.
Mm, yeah. And I don't know why this just came up for me, but like, did you ever experience imposter syndrome at all?
Hmm. I have to really, you're asking a lot of thought provoking questions today,
Um,
Rebecca. I'm so surprised. I'll tell you something interesting in the work I do. I'm going to generalize first, and then I'll be very honest about me. I work with a lot of men and women. My expertise and specialty area is executive women, professional women. I actually am a professional mentor to women's groups. I'm associated with a development program called Women Unlimited, and I help women who are high potential at kind of that midpoint of their career where they are trying to do it all. They're upwardly mobile, they have kids, they have spouse or partner or whatever, and they're just really, really, really busy in their lives and never have a chance to take a step back. So this is one of the biggest gifts they can ever get. And what I've realized very consistently about women at almost all stages is that they're, of course, just as brilliant, if not more in many cases, just as competent as any man will ever be. In fact, there was an interesting study that I'll share in a moment that the Wall Street Journal did a couple of years ago. But what is very interesting, which is what this study showed, is that women particularly lots of times lack confidence and sureness about their place in the business world and about the way they can exude their own strength and power and still be very feminine and very who they are. And what I've really learned in the work that I do is one of the key outcomes with all people, but I clearly seen this with women professionals, is just a sense of more confidence, kind of that opposite of that imposter syndrome, that I actually am in my space and I am really good at what I do. And there's real freedom in that. There's also freedom. I mean, I'm very clear on what I'm not good at, and I'm very expressive about that. I have no problem saying to someone, that's not my sweet spot. I don't know that. If anything, I think it actually reinforces your own professional credibility. When you're honest about what you're not good at, it also implies that you know what you're really good at. And so to your point, I'm sure I did struggle with that personally. And I have to say, the beauty of the crow's feet and all that comes with chronologic maturity, we'll call it, is really a greater sense of the power of your own evolution and growth. And that is what keeps me happy every day of my life professionally with my clients. It's seeing people come into their own. It's seeing people recognize that they have major gifts to contribute. And instead of beating themselves up about whatever, small things they don't do well, they should really be focusing on what it is that really differentiates them from many other people, and focus on that so they can really bring that up to excellence, and not focus on the couple of things that they're not as good at, because at best, even if they work on it night and day, they may achieve a level of mediocrity, but to really focus on where you excel. And I know you've done that with yourself. You've developed a whole niche because of that. You've taken your personal experience of your life that had a lot of challenges, and you turned that around, Rebecca, into something that you can give to the world as a major gift. And that's really about being vulnerable and being open and taking your resentments that you have, which has a potential negative connotation, and giving them power and strength and really turning your own life around. So, that's something that I have to say is just makes a really powerful impact on people when they recognize that they have strength. And that's a matter of really identifying it and leveraging it, and then really figuring out how they can show up in the world in the best way that they can.
So, first of all, whose interview is this? Okay.
Clearly mine. No.
I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm going to preface it with something first. Okay. So I do not believe in the word arrive or arrived. I don't believe that because of two major reasons. One, I feel like when we believe that we've arrived, it's the start of our demise. Then on the other hand, I don't believe that we've arrived, and this is majorly where I sit with this definition is, we're always constantly moving, shifting, growing. So it may be impossible to actually be able to pinpoint something in time, because it's probably still moving if you try to pin it down, right? So, but my question is, was there ever a moment in your life slash career where you felt like you arrived?
No, I don't think I have yet. You know, I mean, I will say that I'm at a point in my career where first of all, my work spans both corporate life, individual professionals, millennials, and a lot of nonprofits. So I work with faith institutions. I work with amazing hunger organizations, organizations that change people's lives. So I have to say, I am always growing myself, and I've steeped my career life. So a portion of my proceeds, for as long as I've been in business, by the way, always goes to certain good causes. And each year I choose a different good cause, but that's just part of my work that I've always done. I also have a percentage of my work that I do pro bono for people who truly are in need. You know, it could be someone who has a severe disability. It could be someone who comes from an indigent background through absolutely no fault of their own. It could be someone who just really needs this and can't afford it. So that's a part of who I am. And so I'm never arriving, just because I'm always taking on, you know, new challenges. And the thing that's really cool about this work is, as much as you can really know what you do and feel really confident in your sweet spot, every single situation is truly a new situation, because it's new people, new backgrounds, new challenges. And the thing that drives my work is an insatiable interest and curiosity in what makes people tick. Because unless you really understand that at a deep level, you really can't understand how you can help guide them to become the person they want to be at this juncture in their lives. It's really, really important to understand their background and who they are. So one of my pieces of work that I consider critical is to always meet people where they are. You know, I don't have preconceived notions, because if I did, I'd be wrong half the time. Very non-judgmental. So someone can tell me almost anything and I'll be, okay, cool, you know, great, that's your story, tell me more. And what you really learn over time is the more accepting you are of wherever someone is on their journey, the more they have that opportunity to grow from that point. So yeah, I have to say, you know, you're making me realize, even in having to talk about this out loud about me, which I usually don't do, it's usually about other people and concepts. It just makes me that much clearer that I'm so where I belong at this point in my life.
When have you been really proud of yourself?
Well, okay, that's a really good question again. I am a recently selected president of my temple. And I went through I'm going through a pretty tough personal time. And I had to give a quote unquote presidential speech on a big recent holiday. And I realized I do this for a living. Why am I struggling? I was really struggling for quite a while because I was trying to get it done in the summer and I had to deliver it in October, and I'm really struggling. So long story short, when I really started thinking about it, people kept telling me, just be yourself, just tell your story. And I realized that's what was stressing me out, because if I was going to be myself and I was going to be authentic, then I had to actually tell my story, my real story. So I have to tell you, it wasn't easy, and I struggled with every word and every you know, how I was really going to deliver this, and was feeling a little anxiety about it. But very long story short, the proud moment was delivering it. And by the way, the part about my personal story was one tiny little element. It was really within a context and a theme of how I was in my home away from home, and how it was just such a place of love and support and kindness that you can not only totally be yourself, but, you know, to recognize hopefully before you go through a trauma or an area of, you know, of great concern and upset, that you really always have someone and a place and a community that will embrace you. But anyway, the proud part was I delivered the speech, and so many people came up. And what was really making me most proud was that they told me that they had stories and that they had experiences that it really caused them to want to share with others, because it was really helping them understand, you know, the depth of challenge could also be, you know, have such a silver lining. And that's really something that I think most recently makes me most proud.
Hmm. I'm going to challenge you on something.
Okay.
Gonna, I love everything that you said, but I'm gonna challenge you on something. This whole time we've been talking about like humanness, if that's like an actual word, right? We're talking about people and connection and home away from home. But I know you, and you like, if someone says what you do like differently than you want to hear it, or if they call you you know, a life coach, and you identify with the business coach. Okay. So I know that you're a business coach, and I know that you help people with their careers and in a business context, but you mentioned that there's a piece of like sort of life coaching or humanness, or just like the whole person that we have to take a look at in order to like integrate into where they want to go in their career. All right, I just feel like that's not a small piece. I feel like it's a larger piece that you really, really care about when you're working with your clients. And I'm wondering, not, you don't have to give me an exact number, I want you to talk about it, but like in my mind, I was thinking the ratio was smaller, but as we're talking, I know it's bigger.
So tell me your question again. I want to make sure I understand the challenge and the question.
So I'm challenging you on, so when you say you're a business coach
Yeah,
and the way you frame it, I'm
yeah,
thinking, okay, she's 90% business coach and 10% helping people with their lives, right?
got it.
But after we've been talking this whole time, it really feels like it's not 90-10.
Yeah. So again, really astute comment. I'll tell you why I focus on the business part, because that's my niche. And I do believe that you have the most credibility when you do this sort of work if you stay very true and focused to what you know the best. And given that I was a corporate executive for so many years, I know how to navigate politics. I know how to make sure that your social media presence is very congruent with who you are at this juncture. I have a basic business head for just all kinds of business strategy and results. And that is where I come from. With that said, I believe what I said to you, just to clarify, because I don't think I can say 90-10, 70-30. I think what I said to you was that with that said, I'm keenly aware that in order to be most helpful to people and most effective, that I'm very open to understanding the whole person. And so when someone comes into me, sometimes, yes, they do talk about their marriage, or they do talk about a struggle they're having with a partner or a child, but it's usually in context to certain behaviors and certain things that are happening in the work world that get negatively affected sometimes as a result of having these challenges. So it's not like I'm in denial about someone's personal life or situations that really cause them, you know, concern or happiness or whatever it is. However, with that said, people come to me because they know that I am business oriented and I'm here to help them with that part of their career. With that said, I'm going to say with that part of their life, I am going to say that lots of times, because I work with incredibly busy people who are often type A and feel overwhelmed, especially senior executives who have all these different constituencies that they're responsible for having good relationships with and managing and leading and getting business from and donorships and all those things. I do really respect greatly that there's a need to take a step back and look at their priorities. And their priorities, I very much listen to at a deep level. And I do ask them what's most important in their life. So some people say, I'm a father, I'm a partner, I'm a business leader, I'm a baseball coach, I'm an athlete. You know, people say whomever they are, you really listen keenly. And one of the things you listen to, and you listen also, by the way, to things that aren't said sometimes, which is really a powerful learning as a coach. But I really even listen to the order that people share that, you know, because lots of people, and by the way, a lot of women executives, the first thing they talk about is their career. They don't talk about their family, and no judgment here. It just shows that at this point in their life, that's a very critical priority. Sometimes they're the main breadwinners. Sometimes they have, you know, a partner who is equally engaged in the professional arena. It's something they just really engage about. You know, there's all kinds of reasons, but the point is sometimes they're single, and that's not only the source of their business success and satisfaction, but it's also a large part of their social skills and satisfaction. So to your point, you know, I absolutely recognize the power of looking at someone's whole life. And by the way, sometimes when I give someone homework, because I usually give them homework and it's about themselves, and I ask them to do something regarding their priorities, lots of times they've got all these areas, you know, family, and I'm doing these 3 things, and business, and I'm doing these 7 things. And there's only one thing missing. Guess what it is?
Themselves.
Bingo. So that's something we talk about too, because again, I work with people on sustainable change, sustainable learning, and sustainable impact. So, you know, that's why people take me on for a period of time. I don't even charge per session, because I'm not a believer in a session or a training program normally really helping someone make a big change in their life. At best, they can gain a little awareness when you do something like that. I'm really into sustainable work where there's follow-up, where there's building on the previous session, where there's homework, where there's someone journaling so they're tracking their trajectory, you know, in the biggest, you know, in the largest scope, you know, you see people, like I said, truly transform. And yes, a part of that is their big picture of their life and their priorities.
See, but this is why you are so excellent at what you do, and um, why you stand out from other business coaches. You may not incorporate a lot of active like life coaching, but the fact that you have such strong family values,
Mm-hmm.
and um, you're just such a warm and gentle person, and you can take these amazing qualities that you have that are just like human, like good, really good person human qualities, and you bring that into the work that you do. You're not just like threading it in, it's the foundation of what you do. People connect with you and they like working with you and they recommend you because you are like a very sound and beautiful person. And because of those values, that's, I mean, I'm just speculating here, but like that's where the connection happens with your clients. That's why they love working with you. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to give you homework and all that. But if you didn't have that foundation and understand your clients by the way that you really listen beyond the words, and you really get your clients and you really love your clients, like you wouldn't be helping them the way that you're helping them.
Wow, I want this as a tape so I can listen to it at night when I'm going to sleep.
Yes, Kate. So you could.
That really is a high compliment, and I take what you said really seriously, because I take my work very seriously. I don't look at it as a nice little thing that I do. I when I take a client on, I'm all in. And in fact, when you talk about differentiating from a practical point of view, I, and I've shared this with fellow coaches who are usually a little shocked. I'm not a 45-minute a session person. I'm not you can only talk to me once a week or once a month or whatever the game plan is for our regular meeting times. I'm all in. And so I'll have clients who are freaking out before a presentation, and they'll call me and say, can I talk to you in 20 minutes? And if I'm available, I will do it. Because what I've really seen is people grow the most when you can also, besides building the steps in a very intentional way, you're also there in their moments of need. And I have to say that I offer that, and I've never had anyone take advantage. I don't have people calling me 3 times a night on Saturday night at midnight. I don't have that. But I do make myself very accessible and available. And I think you really hit on something about I am all in on that client. I want that client to be quote unquote successful. And one of the things we do early on is we define what does success mean to them. We have a very specific contracting discussion about how we will work together and what really works for them, because every individual actually is motivated by different things. Some people really appreciate challenge. Some people need TLC with a little bit of challenge. And I'm very open to hearing what works for people, as long as they're open to growing. If they're not, and if they're not going to be available, and if they're not going to be willing to really put their whole heart and soul in this, it's not going to be, it doesn't mean they can't do well, but it's just not going to be working with me. I'm very clear on that. In fact, I have 3 requirements to work with me. Want me to tell you what they are?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm saying requirements in quotes.
Yeah. Can I guess what they are? Number 1.
Absolutely.
Show up on time.
No.
Number 2, do your homework.
Yes. Number 3, you got it.
So now we're back to number 1. So number 1, do your homework. Number 2 is they have to be as invested, if not more, than you are in the relationship and the process.
You're on the right track there.
All right, that's a yes. All right, and then number 3, they have to, they have to celebrate themselves as they go through their time with you.
That's beautiful, but it's not mine.
That's not
exactly. I do think it sounds just like you. I'm not into self-celebration. I'm into get results. No. That's the business versus the human, by the way. No, my 3 are number 1, above everything else. You got to be really open and honest, because unless, a lot of people have pride and veneers, and listen, in the realm that I work, most executives need to put on a happy face even when they're feeling miserable. Although there's power in being yourself and being vulnerable and authentic. We can talk about that if we get to it at a parallel point. But this, being open and honest is the only way we're going to guarantee that we're working on what we're supposed to work on. Because if they start telling me stuff that, sounds good, but really isn't what the issue is for them, or not with how they're really feeling, we're going to be working on the wrong stuff. So that's number 1, open and honest. Number 2, which you had to a degree, was being really clear that we have the right rapport and chemistry and trust. Because if someone doesn't trust me, and quite frankly, if I don't have that mutual, professional credibility, again, it's not going to be as powerful an outcome. And there's really not going to be the result that someone is going to have expectations to achieve if they've invested in working with me. So that's number 2. And number 3 is you got to do the work. And, if anyone's not willing to do the work is about them. So if they're not willing to look at themselves or think about themselves or, you know, do whatever. Because I give very, very custom work. It's never, I don't have like pat homework ever. It's really what comes up in our conversations and what's going to move the dial according to the goals that they've set for themselves. So those are the three requirements.
I know you gave me homework one time and there was no way I was not going to do it.
And you did a darn good job too, might I say. And that really moved the dial.
In all seriousness, like that was the beginning of my practice taking off.
Yeah.
What we worked on, like viewers, she gave me like one thing to do. Okay. And it was like relatively easy, even though I had to like think about it and organize and everything. That one single homework assignment has created many other opportunities and expansions in my practice. So
yeah. I
you.
saw that. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And, you know, the gift I get from doing that is I see how you prosper and grow and how your business, and again, because I'm looking more at the business aspect, you know, when I see you so prosper and grow and achieve as a business professional, that gives me the pleasure. You know, it's interesting. I'm at a stage in my career where when I meet with people who are they're similar stages in careers, a lot of people come to me and they say, I need meaning in my life. That is probably the number one comment I hear from people over 40. And what I've really seen is being able to tap into how someone can really make an impact on others' lives. There's a million arenas to do it, right? It's a matter of kind of figuring out what you're really good at and what you like, what your own attributes are and what the best environment is. You know, there's so many ways you can do it, but the problem is there's so many ways that you want to be pretty focused and hone in. But what I derive great pleasure in is exactly the kind of outcome that you talk about. It's being with someone where by nature of your intuitive skills and your questioning ability as a coach on my part, I can actually, you know, get the thing that's going to cause you to create your own breakthrough idea. And that's what's so powerful about this work. I don't tell people what it is. Sometimes they ask my advice, by the way, and I can do a little hybrid work. I don't just ask questions. So if I'm pretty sure that I'm seeing something or knowing something, I'll ask someone permission. Is it okay if I tell you what I'm thinking? And I will do that. But overall, the best work in this arena is when people discover for themselves what their answer is, what their breakthrough idea is, what can make a huge difference in their life. That's really powerful.
I totally agree with that. And like, sometimes I feel like I'm like an investigator or something, or like I'm like tasked with putting this major puzzle together, but I have to do it like faster than my client sometimes, right? Not that I'm giving them the answers or steering them in a certain way that like, it's not my agenda, but clearly if what they're working on is like unraveling and it's like obviously going in a certain direction and I can see where it's going, it's like to be in a position to support and just hold that client as they're going through. So like, I don't know, I can't explain it, but it's amazing when they see it themselves and you happen to have a feeling that that's what it is before they have it. It's just like, in the past, like when I was younger, I would always like to give people advice, tell them what to do. People came to me because they wanted to. Ever since I became a coach, like the concept of the client has all the answers, that I want that on my, like, I don't think I'll have a tombstone, but if I did have a tombstone, like I would want like that message to be known, because whether we're talking about coaching or not, like I truly believe that, like, you know how big I am about intuition and how intuitive I am. It's just, I truly believe that. I truly believe that
Yeah.
we all know our own answers. And sometimes it's just like a blockage here or here that someone else has to gently say, okay, why don't we move this over here, right? And then, so I'm right there with you. And I, there's some times where I have to teach. Not that I have to, but it's like a perfect opportunity for me, and obviously we ask the client if we can share, but sometimes just sharing like a little nugget that's relevant to what they're kind of like teasing out, um, to change that perspective and have them, like if they were stuck in one perspective and now they can kind of see so much more, and that leads to a transformation, or like an aha moment or something like that, something unlocking. I think it's sometimes appropriate to be able to teach as coaches. Do you feel the same way, and do you ever do that? If so?
It's a really, that's a question I need to think about. I do think I impart knowledge. So I guess you could consider that teaching. Um, I don't really think of what I do as teaching, but I am aware, particularly when it comes to fields that I'm just extremely steeped in, like leadership. And a lot of people come to me because they want to be better leaders, stronger leaders, or people come to me because they are identified as being the next, president, CEO, CFO, COO. And so lots of times it's really thinking about, what do I need to hone here so that I can achieve over here. With that said, I think, yeah, I probably do, because, I'm a data quant nerd. So I read a lot of studies. And I have to say, I was mentioning, by the way, the Wall Street Journal one, and I didn't even tell the end of the story. This is such a good example because it's worked so well with so many women executives. So I'm going to totally violate all the details and, the substance, but I'm give you kind of the high level summary. So basically there were two groups. One was a women's group and one was a man's group. And there were two jobs. And so one set of requirements of one job, the man came up and looked and said, wow, say there are 5 elements. And the man looked at there was really, actually, I'm saying this a little wrong. It was like a job and there were specs. So the man comes up and he goes, wow, this is amazing. I fit 2 of those 5. I'm in. I'm ready for this job. I'm going to go for it. The woman comes up and she says, I don't know. I kind of think I have 4 or 4.5 of the requirements of the job. I don't know if I'm quite ready. That is the result of a study that was pretty intensive, and that was published, as I said, in the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago. And I can't tell you how many times I share that with women's groups when I meet with them. And now they just nod their head and just, it so resonates with them. So the point is, when you read studies and when you know data and when you're very comfortable, I mean, I'm a quote unquote expert in a couple of categories, not a lot of stuff, leadership, networking, emotional intelligence in the workplace, culture, how to drive a high performing culture. Yes, you do come across with a degree of knowledge that people are really interested in learning and getting, but I try not to proselytize and I try not to be didactic. And I really try to, again, like understand what someone is really going to benefit from. But I will say, with all that said, the concept of emotional intelligence is one of the largest areas of interest by clients of mine and growth opportunities, because again, going back to studies, it's really one of the key differentiating factors between very successful people and people who may be talented and smart and good stuff, but they never really are successful. So that is an area that I'm very comfortable talking to people about in a level of detail that could be, I guess, interpreted as teaching.
What's the difference between emotional intelligence and strengthening your intuition?
Well, that's a good question. They're actually different. So the really good news about emotional intelligence is that it's a skill and it can be taught. People lots of times say, oh, you're either born with it or not. And I think people feel that way about intuition sometimes. So we'd have to get into your aspect of strengthening your intuition. There's probably some ways you can do that. But emotional intelligence comprises 5 specific component areas. And each one of those areas has a term that is a little bit, if you just listen to the words, you wouldn't really understand what it is. You really have to understand what's behind each one of those. And just to explain to you, just tiny, little background here. It was actually first discovered as a science, as an actual science, by social scientists and in overseas in Europe. I think it was in Amsterdam. Then this guy, Daniel Goleman, who was my background, industrial psychologist, heard about it and experienced it and said, wouldn't it be interesting if I did a study of business people and saw if this is something that could really make an impact on how they performed and were effective as leaders. So he actually did a very intensive study, probably about 15 years ago or so. And he looked at 200 leaders of every type of industry, every type of firm, every size business and firm. So there was pretty much everything from Fortune, 50s to professional services firms, like law firms, accounting firms, etc. And he actually recognized that there was a distinct impact when people were able to learn about being more emotionally intelligent. And by the way, emotional intelligence is the sister to IQ. It's IQ versus EQ. So IQ is your intellectual piece of your brain. And what's really been proven time and again is unless you work in a vacuum and never talk to a fellow human being, that IQ never gets you as successful as EQ. Ideally, IQ is the price of entry. So you have to be, competent and all of that good stuff. But EQ is the key differentiating factor, as I said. So the intuition is a piece of it. It's actually related to one of the 5 components, and we won't get into all the details now, but it's related to one of those components. It's a really important component. It's about how you empathize with people and how you really get into understanding where they're coming from. But it's just one piece.
I want to talk to you about that more offline because I want to understand that just like on a personal level.
Happy to do it. I think you'd really benefit from talking about it. I think potentially it's something you can even incorporate into, how you do your work. So I'm happy to help you with that, or happy to talk it through with you.
Thank you. Well, Elizabeth, this has been fantastic. Our viewers are already in love with you. I know they are.
Wouldn't go that far.
How can they get a hold of you?
Thank you. Oh, how can they get a hold of me? Well, first of all, you can just look up Elizabeth Resnick LLC. That's Elizabeth with a Z, Resnick with an S. I've got a website. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a Facebook page. I also have a firm called The Next Best Chapter. And I run a once-a-month program with 2 colleagues of mine. One is a former IBM executive, and his name is Bob Russo, and one is a palliative physician. His name is Dr. Jay Lippman, who specializes in meditational techniques. And we take people through a 1-day session, and it's literally, it can either be a general session which you can sign up for, or they can actually, it can be different groups. So we have the young professionals group, we have corporate leaders, et cetera, et cetera. And bottom line is people come in and clarify their mission and leave with a very specific plan as to what they're going to do to achieve it. So the nextbestchapter.com and, or actually .org, excuse me, we just changed that. And my phone number, 201-788-0804. Email Elizabeth Resnick LLC @gmail.com. And I'm sure they can always reach out to you, Rebecca, and you'd be happy to pass on my information. And by the way, I have to tell you something about this business. I started with that one client, and that was, a 6-month assignment. And I've never really done any publicity at all. I've never done any major marketing. It's all word of mouth. It's all referral. And I've always been very blessed to work full time. So I'm very blessed to have this experience with you. And you are truly an expert interviewer. I see another dimension of you here.
Well, I would have asked, if we weren't recording, I would have asked much deeper questions, but then we would actually be coaching. Ha 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 ha.
Happy to do that offline.
No, people actually, thank you for the compliment. People have said like my line of questioning is like really provocative when I'm a coach, but like I'm really gentle at the same time. And I just, I don't know. I like that deep stuff. I've always liked deep conversations.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know what? Listen, you can operate here at your head level, at the superficial level. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. to me, you know, when you really go to the gut level and you really get to know someone in a whole deeper way, you just have such a different bond and such a different connection and such a different understanding, that you can just care about someone and help them in a whole different way.
I totally agree. Because even with us, like we were bonding anyway, but then there was that day that you were like, "What's your deal, Rebecca?" And I just like kind of spilled my life, and you were like, "Oh my God."
Yeah,
And the whole relationship just like, I mean, I don't know, I feel like I'm your sister, and like we're hugging right
absolutely.
now. So and I'll feel that way for the rest of my life. So
I agree. I'm so happy you didn't say my daughter. Thank you. Yes, you're my older sister. Let's leave it at that. I
I'm your
agree.
older sister.
I agree. I agree. The feeling's very mutual, by the way.
Oh, well, viewers, if you haven't had fun, I don't know what to tell you, because we've had fun today. And thank you guys so much for being here with us. Reach out to Elizabeth. She's fantastic. You can already tell that. And she's incredible at what she does. So those coaches that are watching, you know, even as a mentor, Elizabeth, you know, I'm sure she can share much more than she did today. But anyway, viewers, thanks again. Elizabeth, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
You know what? One thing I didn't mention at all, which literally as you're winding up, so I just couldn't insert at that point. I never mentioned IPEC and getting professionally certified and how that really made a difference for me, because I knew so much more than most people in there because I'd been doing it so long, but it was really impactful for me. And it gave me the credentials that I didn't have specifically for this. So I should have said something about that because that's one of your areas you're putting it out, but I'm going to let that go.
Well, you just said it now in the outtakes.
Oh my God.